Hi, I'm Anthony for City Backyard Veggies. I'm going to be planting this season's first sweet corn crop. Got my seedlings here at the moment. I've been growing these for the last 5 weeks and they're ready to go in the ground. It's actually, if anything, a week too long in their pots. I've got this bed here just behind me that's perfect for corn. I grew corn in this spot this time last year and it did absolutely amazing. I do have a few stray broccoli plants out there in the back which I need to work around, but I've come through and given this space a bit of a turnover, and I'm going to be adding some compost, homemade compost in this spot, and start planting out seedlings. Before I do that, I'll bring you in closer and show you what my seedlings look like. These are my seedlings and the variety is called Max. Now I started growing these at the start of August I believe, and I had a previous video where I did that. My issue is that I may have kept them in that pot just a bit too long. As you can see, just a little bit of yellowing on the leaves. That actually just happened overnight, so they need to really get planted out. I wouldn't want them to get any bigger than this, and I'm just anxious I may have just left them just a tad along. So I'll go through and choose the better seedlings and I'll plant them in the patch. The patch itself, it's in the order of about 3 meters by about 1500. Because this is the south facing fence, I still get a lot of shadowing in the back there, but as we go into summer, it'll be full sun in this location. I'm gonna have to be planting around these broccolis. These were the last of the seedlings from the 5th planting. I needed to find a spot for them, so I've planted them here, and I think that, yeah, you can just see there's just a little head coming up in these broccoli, so these will be harvested in 2 weeks time, so they won't have too much of an impact on my planting. But I'm gonna look at planting around them and maybe even potentially putting 1 or 2 seedlings in between them. At this stage I've turned over the bed and I'm going to put 2 barrel loads of homemade compost on it and dig it in, and then I'm going to add a little bit of potash and dolomite lime. And I'll actually, because these plants do like a lot of nitrogen, I will be adding a couple of scoops of chicken manure pellets as well. So I've incorporated that compost and the amendments into the soil. For my planting, usually I run my rows perpendicular to the bed, but today I'm going to look at running them across the bed, and I'm going to look at trying to get 3 to 4 rows, and I want to try to space the rows out at 60 centimeters. I find personally when I plant corn, the more space I give it, the bigger the ears that are formed. If I want to get full ears forming, my rows need to be that 60 centimeters apart, and the plants need to be at least 30 centimeters apart. And that's in my experience. Now I am playing around with the spacings every year, see if I can bring them a bit closer to increase the density of plantings. But today, looking at doing my rows 60 centimeters and my seedlings planted out at 30 centimeters apart. Now to set up my rows, I'm going to use my rake and just pushing the soil around, forming that trench at which I'm going to be planting my seedlings into. When it comes to planting the seedlings, sort of grab each one of the seedlings, and you can just see that looks perfect. The yellowing, I'm hoping that would go away once I start fertilizing these seedlings as they get in the ground. This is a sign of nitrogen deficiency, but because they've been in a seed punnet for the last 5 weeks, it's expected. Using my trowel just to dig the hole, planting the seedling. Now bringing the soil pretty deep if you can around the base, and don't be shy to press the soil down, and that's fine. Just keeping a little dimple around the base. Finished planting those corn seedlings, and ideally I still needed a few more to plant out, but I'd run out. But that's okay. I ended up getting 4 rows of about 25 seedlings. I need to come through and give these a water, and I'll do that now. I will be starting my next round of seedlings because my aim for this season's corn is to get at least 4 or 5 plantings done, with my main planting in the main west bed in about January. But I am looking potentially, as continuing on my corn seedlings, plantings. Next plants I'm going to be planting here once I remove these broad bean seed plants, and likewise continue to planting all the way down, trying to see how much corn I can get out this season. Back out in the patch this morning and just having a quick checkup on that corn planting, and they're looking pretty good. They've settled in overnight. It's been a quite cloudy day today, so they shouldn't struggle too much with transference shock. And now I've got a few hours to kill between family time, and I need to come over to my north facing bed and just do a bit of work there at the moment. And just over here I have my north facing beds, and just as a recount, this is where I planted my carrots. This is the rockets that's now gone to seed. Got my bed of coriander, which is ready to harvest. This is the length that my mum wants it. I need to get on top of that and harvest it. And on this bed here, this is where I had the wombox over in that corner, and I had just a bit of lettuce in this patch. And plan for today, if I have the time, is to clear the rocket, plant some more carrots in this spot, harvest all this coriander, take it over to mum's, and most importantly plant my first season of jalapenos. Got my jalapeno seedlings right here, and I'm going to be looking at planting them in this location here. Full sunny spot, out of the way. These plants are going to expect to be lasting all the way till, you know, April, May. The variety I plant every year is called Jedi, and I've planted this now for 3 years running, and they produce a really long, big jalapeno, which is perfect for stuffing. I generally use all my jalapenos to make candied jalapeno or cowboy candy, but also make a lot of pickles, and sometimes if I have the excess, I'll make hot sauces. I have turned over the bed in this location, and jalapenos, like capsicums, they like a fair bit of nitrogen, but not too much. I only like a lot of nitrogen in the early growing stages until they flower, and then at which point I'll start adding more potash and phosphorus based fertilizers. But in this section of bed, because I had the one box in this spot, it's going to be quite depleted of nitrogen, so I'm going to add half a bag of chicken manure, and I'll add also some potash and a little bit of dolomite lime, and probably a handful of dynamic lifter pellets as well, just to add a bit more of that nitrogen back into the soil. And planning out my rows for these plants, I want to try and stay away from the fence and from the conifers adjacent, as you can just see up there. So I'm thinking of doing 2 rows, and I'll probably space them at about 6 centimeters apart, and I'll run the rows straight down, and I'm going to plant the seedlings at 40 centimeter spacing. Spacing out these seedlings, I'm going to try to put the first seedling pretty close to that timber, just digging a small hole, trying to see if I can get as much of the root ball with the plant. There you go, beautiful. So just going to plant it, probably plant it up to those first leaves. I may even remove these lower leaves and then just plant them in. That's the extent of it. So these seedlings are now planted, and at this stage, after this watering, just going to let them settle in. Most important, just to keep them protected from the birds and from the cats. So I'm going to be putting a bit of mesh over the bed. As the weather warms up, these things will be growing pretty fast, and I'm expected to start harvesting my first round in that early November stage, where I'll start harvesting jalapenos. I will give them a little bit of nitrogen fertilizer coming into the next week or week after to really get them going, and then once they start flowering, I'll switch to a high potassium, high phosphorus fertilizer to encourage large fruit and more flowers. So that's done. I'm going to see if I've got still a bit of time. I'm actually going to start pulling out a lot of this rocket, I generally don't like to keep plants for seeds. I just find it takes up too much time, too much space in my garden. So although it's nice to have flowering plants in my patch, I personally, my context, don't see the value in keeping seedlings. I generally grow a lot of hybrids, and so I prefer to buy my seeds. This won't go to waste. I will pull this all out and the chickens will make a meal of this, and then I'll come through later on and start planning out the beds, how I'm going to plant out my carrots in that space. So I finished removing that old rocket patch, and I've gone and fed that waste to the chickens, and they'll make a meal out of it. I have just, with my shovel, I've just turned over that soil and flattened it out to make it nice and fine for me to plant out my carrots. What I'll be doing is continuing on the planting all the way up to the end of the bed, and I'll be using the same variety that I planted in that first section, and the variety is called All Year Round. Again, I'm going to continue with the planting, and I'm going to set up my rows at 20 centimeters using the back of the rake, and I'll do it at that 20 centimeters so that I can come through and easily weed those carrots. And again, with my carrot seeds, just as much as I can, just plant the rows lightly, because I'm going to come back and thin them at a later date. And then once that's planted, just gently bringing the soil back together over the rows where the seeds were, just gently bringing it back together. And then I like to just gently pat that soil down so there's proper contact with the seed. And as with my previous planting, I'm going to add the bed sheet, and I'll water through this bed sheet, and that will just really lessen the velocity of the water, protect the seeds, and also will keep the seed bed damp for that 6-7 days that we need for the seedlings to germinate. Moving on from the carrot patch, I need to come through now and harvest this coriander. And I planted this coriander about 2.5 months ago, and when I planted it was in the middle of winter, so although it germinated, it just took a lot longer to actually put on any size. But as soon as the weather warmed up, it's looking amazing. Now we tend to use it in stews. A couple of Lebanese dishes that we cook use a lot of coriander, so the idea here is I'll be harvesting this, giving it to my mum, and she'll be processing it for the freezer. But I'm going to come and just see how much I end up coming out of this patch, give them a light wash, and then take them over to the parents. And harvesting these corianders, what I'll be doing is just literally just pulling them out from the base. There you go. That's how they're looking at the moment, looking really, really good. Heaps of leaves, nothing yellow in at the moment, which is great. So now it's starting to get a bit darker and a bit cooler in the afternoon. Hopefully these won't be wilting as quickly, but I'm going to try to harvest a whole lot now, and I'll show you what I end up with. Just finished harvesting that coriander, and up with 9 bunches. They're looking really, really good, actually quite clean, and none of them have bolted. I just went through the whole lot, didn't seem to have any that have bolted. I'm going to give these just a little wash just to get rid of some of the soil off the roots, and then they'll be good to go to mum. So I will start planting out my next round of coriander in about February, March. And before I wrap up this video, I want to give you an update on my fruit trees. Coming up to spring now, every single one of them is flowering. And over here, my avocado, again, the tree is absolutely covered in flowers. You can just see it. I did prune this earlier this year just to get rid of the height and just bring it a bit more compact, but you know, it is flowering a lot. I'm hoping that I do get some crop of these flowers. Last year I was only lucky enough to get the one fruit. There was just too much wind at this time last year, and we have had a lot of big wind events over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm just anxious that I haven't seen any of the fruit set yet. So, you know, just coming through, and you can see like a lot of the flowers appear to have aborted. I'm hoping that in any case some of them would have set, but we'll have to see in about 4 weeks time whether I'm going to get a crop this year. And behind us, just bring you around, this is my mango tree, and mango tree gave it the prune about 6 to 8 weeks ago. I would have liked to have come and tip pruned it, but I didn't have a chance. It was just a bit too late to tip prune it. But again, it's looking really, really good. It's got heaps of flowers, heaps of really good growth. So hoping some of these will set. Still a bit early, making sure I've got the water and irrigation water going to it, and I'll put some bit more fertilizer, making sure it will set. But it is hoping to a good year. It is starting to get a bit tall for me now, and I usually like to net it in February, but it's much just been, again, it's a tad too big to net. But we'll see. I might end up coming through later in the season and just tip pruning those tops to see if I can bring down the height a bit. And finally, this is my persimmon. Really love this tree. This is really, really well producing. I mean, it's, if you can see, the persimmon produces its flowers on new growth, and as you can just see, those are the flowers. And so far so good. Looks like I'm going to have a decent crop come through. Waiting for them to open up, and hopefully they get fertilized. I'm going to keep the water on it so it doesn't shed any flowers. And again, another crop to we'll be harvesting in March, and I'll give everyone an update on how that is going later in the season. Thank you everyone for watching my video. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you in the next one.